Hello and welcome to another episode of Wedflics. I'm Julia Braime, I'm your host and the editor of UNVEILED magazine and the founder and editor of Brides Up North, the top UK wedding blog for Northern brides. Today on the programme we are going to get your taste buds in a tangle because we have invited Rachel Hanna from Marie Antoinette Cake Design to the show, and she is talking about all things cake, from the design to the flavour to learning how to do it yourself. This episode is jam-packed with top tips, advice, and well, it's going to push you towards the cake tin, that's for sure. I hope you enjoy it. So hi Rachel, welcome to Wedflics.
Hi Jules.
So Rachel is Rachel of Marie Antoinette Cakes. She's coming to us from her at-home studio at the moment. You can see she's got some beautiful cakes in the background, and she's going to tell us all about them. So Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself and your business?
Yeah, sure. I'm Rachel. I run Marie Antoinette Cake Design and Sugarcraft School. So we're based in Cheshire, over in the Northwest. So I cover all of the Northwest and beyond, and specialise in custom cakes and teaching.
Fantastic. And so where did your passion for baking come from?
I don't really know. I think just I was always around. My mum and my nana both baked. You know, it was like a weekly thing, really. So it was just always something that was part of my childhood growing up, and just it was never not a part of my life, I guess. And I would, on a weekend, I remember I would bake stuff at my mum and dad's house when I was young, and I would weigh everything out, like a bit like, you know, cookery shows like Delia does.
Yeah, I still do that. Doesn't everyone still do that?
Everything out in little bowls, so it was all ready to go in. So it was obviously a total waste of washing up, but did it anyway because it was like we had like a little peninsula on the worktop island, and it was like I was doing it to camera. So geeky, but yeah, I remember doing that when I was young, and there was no one else in the room. It was just me, pure exhibitionist, and yeah, so I just remember doing that. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the methodology of it and taking your time and weighing everything out, and then just the pure enjoyment of seeing other people enjoy what you baked. Really, they were nothing fancy. Don't get me wrong. It was purely for eating. You know, it wasn't anything fancy, but growing up, we would always there was a lady across the street from my mum and dad's house, and she was a nurse, but in her own sort of spare time, she would make celebration cakes for people. So we always had sort of really fun birthday cakes. So, you know, with like characters on and stuff like that lady across the road would do for us. So it was just always there in the background, I guess.
And so how then did that go? How did that become a career for you? How did you set up Marie Antoinette Cake Design?
Well, it didn't for ages. So we started Marie Antoinette Cakes in 2011, and then really went full force sort of 18 months later. But prior to that, I went down a really academic route, and I know a load of people. I know you did. A lot of creative people end up doing this because at the time when I grew up, it was, you know, you need a job for life and you need security, and my parents were teachers and was very much sort of encouraged to do that academic route, which I went and did. Went to university, did business studies, and did a year in finance, and then specialised in sort of operations and logistics. So totally different. But I did then get a graduate job in working in food. So I had always worked with food and was basically running a food factory for about 8 years. Loved it to begin with, was learning loads, and to cut long story short, I ended up hating it. There was just no creative outlet. I was just in meetings all day, and yeah, it wasn't me at all. So just left and had no plan, nothing, you know, didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew it had to be some creative element, and it had to just be far away from what I was doing. So I knew it would be cake related or floristry related because I love both. So yeah, at that point just had a bit of a pause and a stop with everything. Actually went away and then got married myself and had a honeymoon, and just came back and then thought, right, now I need to figure this stuff out, and did a bit of training and did a little bit of floristry, a little bit of cake design, and yeah, opted for cakes.
Yeah, that is an incredible story. And what I think is interesting about the decision to do the cakes is that cakes combine like the science of baking. To me, it's kind of two halves. So it's like the science of baking with the creative artistry of the decorating. So I think you're probably sort of like fulfilling two sides of your personality there. I mean, floristry is similar. There's like practical bits and then there's creative bits. But yeah, I feel like you're sort of helping both sides of your personality. And I bet that all that business training and food, which I imagine there'll be food safety training as well, that's all come in handy, right? And it's been
definitely. At the time when I left, I was kind of miserable and was a bit like, oh, you know, I've wasted sort of the first 10 years of my sort of career. And actually, you know, I think that was just because I was so unhappy at the time. But it wasn't long before I started to realize actually I'd been taught how to run a business, how to run a far more complex food business and food process than my wedding cake business is. So from being audited by local environmental health and stuff like that, I'd been dealing with them for years. So it wasn't ever anything daunting to me. It was something that I could use on a much smaller scale in my own business.
Yeah, I think that's great, and you wouldn't change that now, would you? That's the same with me. I mean, my background's been so useful to me and what we do. Continues to be every day, really. So when you came into the industry, very competitive market, lots of cake makers out there, to me you stand out. What did you obviously set out on your own path, like what did you want to bring to the industry when you upset all the other cake makers in Cheshire?
I'm not sure that's true, but
so not true. Everyone's friendly.
Everyone is very friendly. For me, when I left my career job, I took 18 months where I had another job, but it was more of a 9 to 5. It gave me some time and freedom to sort of retrain and to decide what the business was going to be. And really, obviously with my business background, I did a lot of research and looked at what everyone else was doing and looked at where the gaps were, and then also tried to then marry that with what I like personally. So with regards to how I want to sort of operate, how I want to deal with clients, how I want their experience to be, how I want my experience to be, and also what I wanted to be known for. And really that was just being the best that I can be and having clients that are exceptionally happy with what they've received from me at the end of the day, and that I've over-delivered versus their expectations. So from a customer service point of view, it was just be the best you can possibly be. And on the kind of design side of things, that was a little trickier because I was kind of learning my skill as well as trying to decide what my style was. And having been in like a business environment for 8 years, it was kind of a little bit locked away in me. So I had to kind of just figure that stuff out as I went, and that was really just loads of experimentation, loads of just exploring what the possibilities were, looking at what other people were doing and actively trying to not do that, which is tricky because once you've seen something it's hard to unsee it. Just trying to make sure that I could be known for something, so that when somebody saw a cake that people would kind of go, oh, I think that's a cake by Marie Antoinette Cake Design. And that's
I could totally do that with your cakes. I could pick them out the lineup.
And people do, and like other cake designers out there that I know can, and vice versa. And that was really important to me. Like I didn't want it to be that I was decorating a cake in the style of somebody else just because I could. And there are loads of cake designs out there that are so popular on Pinterest. Like they are the most popular cake, and you see them redone and redone and redone by other cake decorators. I wanted to be different to that. I wanted to be a cake designer. So I wasn't just decorating cakes, I was designing them from scratch, custom, bespoke every time.
Yeah. And but what that aside, what is your signature style?
That is a tricky question. So I am quite minimalist, but it's not sort of cold minimalism. I would say it's more sort of like a soft minimalist style. I am heavy on the florals. Like I've kind of become known for my sugar floral work. They're really realistic, and I put a lot of time into sort of designing them and learning that craft.
How did you learn that? How did you learn that craft?
Practice. And so I did a couple of basic courses or watched things on YouTube, and there's such a variation of sort of technique on the internet that I would watch some and try them and just be like, no, hate that doesn't fit with me at all. What makes sense to one person and their hands and their mind isn't necessarily going to be the same as the next. So I just researched loads of different stuff and then practiced, and my style just kind of came out of that. Obviously my palette is kind of muted. It's not, I don't do sort of novelty wedding cakes. They're not loud and in your face particularly, and not that there's anything wrong with that. There's loads of amazing cake designers out there who do loud cakes, and you know, I look at them and think they're amazing, but it's not sort of what's inside me.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's important to be true to yourself, and like, I mean, that comes through in like your branding and the sorts of couples you'll be booking, and you know, you won't be everyone's cup of tea if they're looking for something bright and colourful, but that's not. I smiled to myself. You probably didn't see me smiling because I didn't make any noise, and the Zoom only flicks back to me when I make a noise, but unless my kids screamed obviously in the background, which may be happening quite often. But yeah, like I smiled when you said, oh, I'm not into novelty cakes, because your cakes are so far from novelty.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a place for a novelty cake, but
no, absolutely. And there's some, you know, like I'll go to cake shows and stuff, and the competition pieces for novelty cakes are incredible. And it's something that I can't cope with being mediocre at something. So if I'm going to do something, I do it properly. And with cake design, you really, to be the best at something, you have to specialize in it, and you can't be like a jack of all trade if you're going to be sort of really, really good at something. So I made that decision early on. Like, I love the aesthetic that I have now. It's very much me. You know, clients come into my home, and my home makes sense with the style of my cakes.
Having known you for years, I mean, I've seen that style evolve, but you've always been true to that aesthetic.
Yeah,
but I've seen you get better at it, if you see what I mean. You were very good at the start, but now you're like it's a different league. Like particularly the sugar craft, I absolutely love flowers. I'm the same. My to be honest, your aesthetic is mine too, isn't it? Let's be honest. Like if you look at my magazine,
I
would show you a copy, but the it's my set. Hang on. If you look at my magazine,
yes,
you know, we're going for a minimalist.
It is minimalist.
Mature aesthetic.
It's still soft and romantic, and I think sometimes people think of the word minimalism as quite cold and stark. And I think I'm definitely trying to sort of re-educate clients when it comes to that. When I say, oh, you know, clients come and say they want something simple, and they point at like £1,000 cake, and there's this sort of preconception that a simple wedding cake will therefore be lower cost, and actually that's not always the case. And it's trying to sort of just inform couples about actually what does add cost to your cake and what drives the cost behind certain elements, and really they can often be quite surprised by those answers. So yeah, the style's definitely evolved. I think it's matured as I've obviously got older as well. So yeah, it definitely has evolved, and I hope it never stops evolving, to be honest, because even though I try not to sort of follow trends and things like that, obviously we're all aware of trends in weddings and everything else, I try not to sort of ever sit down and go, okay, so what are the trends and what design some cakes around that. I very much try and not do that, and because of that I don't look at a lot of other people's cake designs. I tend to follow just more sort of florists and dress designers, and even like ceramic people that work with ceramics, and you know, for texture and architecture and all that kind of, even travel sites on Instagram I love. You get colour combinations from travel websites that are brilliant. So I tend to just focus on that kind of stuff, and I think stopping looking at the cakes, which I obviously was doing early on with lots of research, has really helped me to just kind of follow my own path. And
the inspiration sort of thing, I think that's similar to how I plan my magazine and shoots for my magazine. I don't look at other bridal magazines because it would drive you crazy. I look at a lot of interiors, travel as well, even like print stuff, but more like stationery types, cakes, like, you know, florals, and it's what you said. And there's never kind of, I never do like a mood board or anything like that. It's all just in your head, so it can like filters down, and then you'll be like, right, I think that this is going to be hot, and it's like all those ideas come out as a concept, and that'll be the same with you, which is exactly what you've described there. I've never heard someone else say it
Yeah,
before like that.
it is really difficult sometimes because, like you say, it just exists in my head until I start playing around. So it's like I'll soak loads of stuff up from, you know, like interiors and florists and things like that. I'll soak it all up, and then I have to sit down more practically and go, how does this translate to cake? How do I reflect that movement or that texture in sugar? So it is, you know, it's adding this, it's combining the sort of the lovely creative side with the then, okay, how do I do this on a cake? How would it work? What kind of size cake would this need to really kind of do this effect justice and this look justice? Is it something that is something quite big, or is it separate cakes, or is it round, square, combination? You know, the structure side of things is always my foundation, and I think it's something that a lot of couples that come to me haven't necessarily considered, unless they've totally stalked me on Instagram, because I do mess about with shapes quite a bit. But yeah, a lot of them haven't really considered, because, you know, you go on the internet and a lot of cakes are still sort of round, and you know, I love round cakes, they're beautiful, but it's not necessarily going to be the best shape and structure and style and shape for the feel and the look of the wedding that you're trying to create, or the venue space even. So all those things kind of need to be taken into account on a practical level once you've kind of fed in all the pretty off the internet. But yeah, it's how to translate those things in sugar onto a cake, making sure it's all edible and it's all as good as it can possibly be.
So when a couple then comes to you for a bespoke cake consultation, what can they be like thinking about in advance? What elements should they be considering in their design? I mean, you mentioned some then, but for a couple kind of just really at the drawing board stage.
Yeah, so when couples first sort of get in touch, I always direct them to my Pinterest board, and well, obviously I have a Pinterest board with my designs on, and then I have other Pinterest boards I have one for texture, I have one for colour combinations, I have one for floral design, dresses, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully they can go through those, and kind of all the things that are pinned on those boards are things that, even though they might be pictures of concrete walls or something, you know, they still make sense with my style. It's stuff that's all in keeping and could feed in. It's a general feel. So I always direct them to the Pinterest page and to Instagram, just to sort of be scrolling, be pinning things, be saving things, and for them to send me a couple of things, a couple of images, might not even be cakes, that they are currently drawn to, with their current thinking, with them wedding in their head, images that they're currently drawn to. And that really kind of gets the ball rolling. And from there, obviously, we can start discussing some of the practical elements. So things like, how big do you need your cake to be? Like, have you got a preconceived idea of how many tiers you want it to aesthetically be? And how does that marry with the number of portions that you're actually going to need? And is there a disparity there? And if there is, let's talk about how we can resolve that. If there isn't, that's fine. And then obviously the structure is where we start with things. But obviously from the first conversation, most of my clients come to me via Instagram, so they're already quite in tune with my style and have kind of decided that we're on the same page, which is brilliant. But really, it's just having a think about starting with a blank piece of paper rather than going, I like this cake and I like this cake, because I never recreate the same cake twice. So for me, it's really difficult if clients get stuck in I quite like this cake. Often I'll say to them, why do you like that cake? What is it you like about that cake? And do you know what? Often it's not the cake. It will be they're drawn to the whole styling of that whole image, the photography. It might be the color tones. But really, actually, when I say specifically, what is it about that cake that you like? They struggle to answer the question. And the answer is, it's not the cake at all. It's actually, they don't actually want that cake. They want
the mood.
Create the mood, the feel, the styling of that, but then we need to put our custom stamp on it that's going to make it perfect for their day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed as someone who works creatively like you do in design, like with things like texture. Even though I'm producing a flat picture, texture is like, people overlook it. But texture is as important as color, as important as flavour. So we haven't talked yet about the actual taste of your cakes. We're just assuming they're amazing, because all we've been focused on, and I bet that when couples come to you at first, they are obsessed with the look of the cake. You pride yourself, right, on being being amazing to taste, and that's like the most important thing for you.
Yeah, definitely. Having always baked, it's not something that's an afterthought for me. It's it's part of the foundation. So yeah, absolutely. I'm really fortunate that because I do go on about flavours quite a bit, go on about them, because I do sort of stress how I value the importance of it. I do attract like-minded clients in that, as well as the style, as also kind of the importance of the cake taste.
Cake lovers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Funny that.
Not just cake lovers, because people are like, oh, we want, we need a wedding cake, but they're not really into cake. I don't get a lot of clients like that. Most of them are sort of as obsessed with cake as I am, or they're just proper foodies. Like, so for them, going out for a meal isn't just something to do because they need to eat a meal. They want the experience. They will, they'll go to restaurants because of the experience. So it's a culinary experience, it's a dining experience, rather than just picking something and leaving. They value that. So I tend to get quite a lot of like-minded couples in that. So when we come to the consultation, I always do the tastings face-to-face. I know a lot of other cake designers send theirs out, and that's absolutely fine. It's what works for them. I've never done that, and I can't see me doing it anytime soon, apart from perhaps because of restrictions. The reason I do it face to face is because for me it's just as important as the design. So I want to be here when you taste the cakes. So we have 8 signature flavours. They get to taste them all. I don't say you can only pick 3. You get to taste them all, because I've learned that sometimes there's some real surprises in there. So for example, my carrot cake always seems to surprise people. People are like, oh, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of carrot cake, and then they taste it and all of a sudden they're like, I love it, we've got to have the carrot cake. So I don't want to kind of limit people's experience with that. So they get to taste them all. And
what are they? What are your 8 signature flavours?
Okay, now you're asking. So I have a traditional Victoria sponge because it's a crowd pleaser, but it's great. And then I have a luscious lemon with lemon curd buttercream, which again it counts as another crowd pleaser. I have a chocolate truffle with chocolate ganache buttercream, which you've probably had before at shows, because I always
I've had all of these.
Which is like a chocolate brownie basically with a chocolate ganache buttercream. It's like a mousse buttercream. Then I have a spiced carrot cake with salted caramel buttercream, a sticky toffee cake with caramelized white chocolate buttercream, which is one of my favorites, a red velvet with white chocolate ganache. What else? Oh, a butterscotch with caramel buttercream. I don't know how many that is.
That's 7.
Oh my gosh.
Fruit? Did you fruit?
I do fruit, but it's not one of my signature 8, just because I'd be making it for a lot of people to not want to try it. It's got a really bad reputation, and a lot of people just...
I love old fashioned. I like a bit of tradition now and then.
From Yorkshire. I love a fruit cake.
I'm not from Yorkshire, I'm from Durham.
I don't think I even knew that. So yeah, I personally love a fruit cake, but I would say probably 80% of people that I come across have no interest in trying it whatsoever. So if people request, I always say, if there's any others you want to try that are obvious, then let me know. So fruit sometimes does crop up, but what I also do is, because obviously everything we do is custom, I obviously offer a premium consultation. So we also offer a premium consultation. So that basically costs a little bit more, but it basically involves the complete recipe development of 2 new flavours.
Wow.
So I've had clients before, obviously, because a lot of them are foodies, they might have a favourite dessert or a favourite flavour profile. So I had a couple last year who wanted to use matcha green tea as a base for their cake, which was not my favourite at all. I'm not a fan of matcha green tea at all, but for them, they were obsessed with it and got an extra one made to have afterwards for just the 2 of them. The other signature flavour is a cherry and almond with kirsch.
Oh yes, amazing. How could you forget that one? That's like...
Yeah, it is delightful, and it's really Moorish,
like a Bakewell tart vibe.
Exactly, but again, if people just don't like the flavour of almond, then they're just not going to get that cake at all. But
I'm feeling a bit stressed because I don't have any cake in my house, so I'm worried. After this call,
on the banana bread bandwagon like everybody else.
No, I like to stick to my talents, and I'm not a talented baker. That sounds
Can't believe
baker.
it.
I'm not bad, but I don't have the love, you know? I don't have the love for it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you've got to,
It's just
you
a
know,
chore. Yeah.
you've got to entertain yourself in lockdown in the ways that you enjoy,
Yeah.
don't you? So
Yeah.
it's all reading and writing and stuff for me. So yeah, so what are your top 3 favourite flavours then, personally?
Personally, for me, I think the chocolate truffle, chocolate ganache buttercream, because it just smells and tastes amazing. The sticky toffee with caramelized white chocolate, and probably the carrot with salted caramel.
Oh, nice. And do you ever do like cakes where you combine a couple of flavours?
Yeah, definitely. So this is also why I always do the consultation in front of the tasting in front of people, because actually some of those buttercreams that I've mentioned will work on more than one cake base. So sometimes, you know, I really like to listen to when they're tasting it so that I can kind of be like, well, you both seem to quite like this buttercream, but then you both really raved about this cake flavor. So for example, like the salted caramel would work beautifully with a chocolate cake. So I will absolutely sort of encourage people to mix and match things and, you know, create something bespoke for them, even within the signature 8 flavors. Because again, you know, why shouldn't you? It's a completely custom product. So
Yeah. And so back to like the look of the cake, in terms of, you said you didn't like to sort of follow trends and things,
yeah,
but
you're gonna ask me anyway.
yeah, I'm gonna ask you now because I'm just interested to know what you think. So what do you think are like, say, top 3 cake trends for next year? What do you see coming up? Because I know you have an eye to it, but I'm not saying you're going to rip these off or do these. I'm just as a specialist in your field and
Yeah.
someone who teaches.
I think square cakes are making a comeback. I've been on like a one-woman mission to bring back square cakes because for years I didn't make any square cakes. They're actually more difficult to make. So I think a lot of cake designers might not actively encourage it. I personally love doing them. I have a technique that it works every time and it makes it a lot easier. That's slightly different to icing round cakes. But yeah, I think square cakes are going to make a comeback. I think at one point they were considered perhaps a bit too old-fashioned, but they're definitely coming back. I think texture on cakes. I'm a massive texture junkie.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, and I think that's just going to keep going and going and going, and there'll be loads more to come with the whole textural trend. And I think florals again. I think people are going to go instead of. So I think florals have always been used on cake, but I think they're going to change how they're used. So the last couple of years, I've been arranging my sugar flowers in a way that again is different to perhaps the signature a couple of clusters on opposite sides of the cake, which you've seen, like we've all seen like a million times, and always look beautiful, very classic look. But I always struggled with those kind of arrangements because they weren't so in keeping with the style that I was.
I think that's more of like a structured style in a different sort of structure. It's like a traditional structure, isn't it? Rather than, I mean, we can see behind you, your botanics there, that they are sugar, those behind you. I know this because I know your cakes, and they look like real flowers and real foliage, and that's your vibe, isn't it? It's much more of a natural look.
Yeah, and just trying to create movement instead of them being neat and formal, just really using the florals and the foliage to just create movement and direction in the cake that from the other side of the room is a wow factor in itself and really draws you in. But you know, because you don't necessarily get to see that on smaller sort of clusters until you get much closer to the cake. And really what I'm trying to do with mine in combining like big sort of statement floral arrangements with texture is that extra dimension. So from the other side of the room, you can see this beautiful cake and you're drawn into it and you can see the flowers from across the room. But as you get close to it, you can really start to see another level of detail within the textures and, you know, those other dimensions that are incorporated into the design that are a real payoff for somebody that actually bothers to go up to the cake table or, you know, only gets picked up in your photographs for your professional photographer, those other sort of dimensions in the design.
It's interesting. So I'm going a little bit off my questions here because I'm actually actively interested in what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is, you know, you don't always consider these things. So in situ, the cake at a wedding I've now got in my head, and there's 2 types. You're right, there's either the cake as an art piece, which is what yours would be, or there's, you know, your traditional kind of wedding cake sitting on the traditional sort of like silver cake stand on a sort of ironed white tablecloth. And actually, the cake as an art piece is just so much more, what's the word, like current and sort of inspiring, really. It just lifts, doesn't it? It lifts the sort of the setting.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you provide cake stands, and how can you help a couple to really show off their cake? Because, you know, just plonking it on standard issue venue stuff would just totally clash with your vibe, won't it?
Yeah, it quite often does. So we, in consultations, we have a really we kind of deep dive into the venue space and where is the cake going, because quite often, if you don't discuss this with clients, it won't be a considered decision.
No, exactly. I'd never thought this before.
Yeah, the cake basically ends up going where somebody in the venue thinks it should go, and that somebody doesn't necessarily have the best, you know, hasn't necessarily got the experience and knowledge to best make that decision. So it might just be like where it's convenient for a table to be put.
Yeah,
so,
or where it always goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's where it's going to go. It's going to go, okay, we put the cake here, this is how we do it.
That's where the cake goes, yeah. And it's like, well, actually, what if we didn't put the cake there? So I always kind of cover this as quite a big chunk of the consultation, actually. And it's really about getting them thinking about how to get the best out of the cake on the day. So not only with regards to how it's displayed within the venue space, but also how it's served as well. So we cover that massively and really prep them for what conversations they need to be having with their catering team as well, to make sure that the cake doesn't go to waste or the cake is served in the way they want it to be served. But with regards to getting the best out of how it's displayed, I always ask couples to, next time they're at their venue, to have a wander around just for 5 minutes while they're there. Just have a wander around the venue space, because quite often there's more than one room and your guests will be moving from room to room throughout the course of the day. Just get them to wander around just with the cake in their mind, to kind of say, actually, there's a bit.
But not carrying a cake, because having done that before, there's nothing more stressful.
But just
no one wants to wander carrying a cake.
Nobody wants. I would never make anyone, apart from my husband. He gets
apart from me. You've definitely made me do that before.
I don't think you've ever carried one of my real ones, though.
That's true. That's true.
We'll work on that.
I'm like, this is foam, right?
Yeah, one-handed.
Spinning it.
See, this is why I don't let you.
Yeah, I've never damaged a Marie Antoinette cake or any cake.
No, you haven't. So yeah, you know, there might be a beautiful detail on a wall, like an archway or something like that, or down there's a beautiful staircase. It might be near a staircase, so as people are walking down into a room or up into another space, but really to kind of think about where it's going to be shown off to the best that it possibly can within that venue space.
Yeah, you want them to have seen it a long time before you're going to be cutting it. You don't want their first view of the cake to be when you assemble to cut it, because like, cakes are expensive things, and they're a celebration piece. They're not just like a tick box thing. They're there's a reason that you get one.
And I think for some people, they might be a tick box piece. You know, if you're not into cake and it's like, but we need one, and that's fine. But I don't tend to get that kind of client. So my clients tend to be like, we really want to show it off. We want everyone to see it. So it's really just getting them to take control over those decisions rather than somebody at the venue make those decisions for them. And then obviously most venue packages will include like use of the cake stand and the knife to do the couple's official cutting of the cake. And again, if the cake stand at the venue is beautiful and it's in keeping with the style of the cake that they're having, brilliant. You know, use it. It's part of what you've already paid for. But the majority of cake stands at venues are quite large, they're quite low level, and they're quite ornate and old-fashioned, which again is perfect for some cake styles, but they don't always fit in with my style of cake. So the majority of my clients do end up hiring a stand off me. We make it really accessible. It's £30 basically to hire one, because for me, I want to make it accessible to everyone so that they're more likely to hire one than they're not. And it really
show the cakes off properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the choice of stand is really important. So have loads of different types and styles and sizes. So with my clients, when we do a consultation, they get sent a Pinterest board with pictures of all our stands on, and I'm always adding more to the collection, because
Your stands are lovely. Even right at the start, when I first came across you, your stands were always something that stood out. I can see one behind you in the sort of plain glass.
Yes.
That's lovely. And see how that's lifting the cake up. It's just it really makes it a focal point. If that cake was sitting down, you wouldn't see the flowers as much.
No.
But you do all different colours, don't you? Like sort of like opaque pinks and whites.
Yeah,
and
we've got like marble ones and brass ones, and yeah, just loads of different ones, dark ones. But I think it's just sometimes, well, you do need to sort of it finishes the cake off. And for me, if you spent £1,000 or more on a cake and you then don't go that final hug and then check what it's going to be on, it's just kind of falling at the final hurdle, really. So I always try and encourage couples, not just the stand, but also things like the linen on the table, and what kind of table is it, what size table is it, is your cake going to look completely disproportionate to the size of table that it's going on? And luckily I've worked at a lot of the venues now, so I can kind of say, look, your venue will probably put a table out that's this size. In my experience, your cake is going to look lost on this table. So ask them for a different size one. So those kind of conversations that we have with clients to make sure that those little details only help make the cake look better rather than detract from it.
Yeah, for sure. And if any won't mind helping with that, just as long as they know in advance, that's all that needs to be done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so this next one's a hard question. So what's your favourite cake you've ever designed?
I knew you were going to ask me this. Do you know, usually it's one of the last ones that I ever did.
Yeah.
So it changes all the time, because I've always got loads of ideas and sketches and scribbles of things that I think need to get that down, because at some point I'm going to forget. I want to try this technique or try this thing, and that's why I love doing shoots, because it really gives you the chance to experiment with those things and then demonstrate what can be done, and then hopefully a client will say, oh, we really like this effect that you did on that, and it's usually because I've done it experimented with a shoot cake. But yeah, it's usually one of the last ones I've done, because I'm always pushing myself. Like, my flowers are always getting better, my texture work is always getting better.
You know, that's so true as well, because I'm thinking back to all our shoots now, because you've made me think of shoots. And there were some cakes that you produced for us for shoots that were just, at the time, like blew my mind.
Yeah.
But now they're, we're done with that. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking back to like when marble was a new thing and hexagons were a new thing, and we did that amazing shoot at Victoria Warehouse, and that was also fresh and current. And now we're just ready for the next thing, aren't we? So I don't blame you for, like, I'm looking at the cakes behind you. It's hard to take my eyes off them, actually. And they're incredible, but they've just evolved so much, right?
Always like chomping at the bit to share images of sort of new designs and new techniques that we've tried, so that clients can sort of start seeing it and kind of going, oh, I've never seen that before. And that, because for me, a lot of my couples come to me because my cakes are different to any that they've seen at any of their friends' weddings, which is a huge draw for them, because every couple wants their wedding to be unique and different and better. They all do want it to be better.
This is something, when I got married, on personal experience, this was something that me and my group of friends were very hot on. We didn't want the same wedding as each other. We're a very tight-knit group of girls. So it's funny to me that sometimes in other industries, like in other parts of the industry, someone will say, like a photographer, someone will say, some photographers built a really good business based on referrals, like, so a friend had them or their sister had them, so then they have them as their photographer, which I can see working, but for other elements of the wedding it doesn't work quite as well, does it?
Yeah, I think for me, my experience is that quite often when people are sort of getting to that stage in their lives where they're settling down and getting married, that quite often a lot of their friendship group is doing the same in the same couple of years. So as much as they're over the moon for all their friends, privately they also don't want to have the same flowers, the same colour scheme, the same anything really.
Yeah, it's best to keep, with brides and grooms listening, it's best to keep that private.
Yeah, if you want to tell everyone about it, keep those details private, because it honestly, it's so difficult to, once you've seen something, to unsee it. And if someone's shown you something that they're going to do for their wedding, it's really difficult, especially because not everybody has that sort of creative vision. So if you've got people that don't have that ability to sort of imagine things and think of different options, then they will just naturally do what they've seen done before.
Yeah, and also like I don't think it's ever malicious. It's also like people think that's the way it's done because their friend did it that way, or their sister did it that way, or their brother, or whatever.
It's beautiful, so why not? Yeah.
The thing with what you do though is even if, say, like best friends came to you, because of the way you design a cake, like their cakes would end up completely different.
Yeah. So I had last year, I think it was an August bank holiday weekend, I had a couple come to me, and then she actually recommended me to her friend who was getting married on the same day.
What?
So they were friends, but not like that.
Right.
So she recommended me to, they booked, and then her friend was getting married. I don't know how they knew each other, but they obviously weren't going to each other's weddings, so they didn't know.
They're not friends.
They didn't make the cut. They didn't know each other that well. That they had the same friendship groups.
Yeah.
They knew each other, and so she recommended me, and they ended up booking. And I was like, this is a bit tricky, because when I was seeing the second couple, I thought, I hope they don't ask me what the first couple are having for their wedding, because of course I wouldn't say. But yeah, I was also hoping that not only did they not ask me, but that they were also having something different. And of course they were. Like, they were quite similar colour schemes, but the look and feel and style of the cakes and the weddings was so different. Both beautiful, but they were so different. So one didn't have any flowers on it at all. So yeah, just very different feels. But I was worried about it. I don't want either of them starting to ask me, because I know couples, brides in particular, do worry if their friends are getting married at the same kind of time, that they're planning a wedding and spending all this money, and then, you know, a month later all the same friends are going to go to another wedding and it be exactly the same. Of course,
particularly if your wedding's second in that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
So yeah, I know people do worry about it, but I was just really hoping that they didn't start asking me. And they didn't.
Do you know what, as well, like, to reassure anyone listening to this and getting stressed by our chat, every wedding is totally different. Like, no matter what you're planning on, no matter, even if your cake was identical or your band was the same or whatever, it just, the people having the wedding and what make the vibe. So your mix of family and friends.
Yeah, the venue has a huge drive on the vibe of the wedding. And
like, but even two weddings that were like identical, like venue, cake, dress, if everything was identical, it would be the people who made it, wouldn't it? Yeah. So don't worry.
And also, like, a good example is I had two friends the year before who both wanted semi-naked cakes. Now, you know that it's quite difficult.
What's a naked cake, Rachel? That sounds.
So they were both wanted that obviously semi-naked look. And
seriously, what's a naked cake? I think people might want to know.
I was thinking, don't be silly, Julie, you know this. So a semi-naked cake is where, naked cake is where the layers of cake are just sandwiched with buttercream, and then there's nothing put on the outside. And then it's just dressed with, like, maybe fresh fruit or fresh flowers. Semi-naked cake is the same, but then with a really thin coating of sort of pale buttercream around the outside. And then full-on buttercream is then a thick layer of buttercream and perhaps some buttercream texture on the outside. So those are quite different to then these cakes behind me, which have got sugar paste icing on, or fondant, as some people might call it, because that's what it's called on all the American baking shows. So yeah, that just gives you a much different finish. So it's obviously doesn't need to be refrigerated.
Crisper finish.
Yeah, and it gives you basically a blank canvas on which you can do loads of different.
Yeah. So back to your couples with the two semi-naked cakes.
Yeah. So they were friends, and one of them had recommended me to the other. So the girl that recommended me to her friend, her wedding was actually second. So I did her consultation first. She found me first, but her wedding was later than the other than her friend who she recommended me to. And so I did the first consultation, semi-naked cake, lovely couple, they booked. Then I did the second consultation for the couple who were getting married first, and they wanted a semi-naked cake, same time of year. So it would be, I was thinking similar kind of flowers maybe. And I was thinking, I don't know whether, you know, I don't know whether they are aware. And obviously I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, I did wonder whether each of them knew that they were both having semi-naked cakes, because they were both going to each other's weddings. And I thought, well, they're going to find out. But actually, with the choice of flowers and the sizing that they chose and the display that they did with their cake table and the venues that they looked so different, and they were just perfect for their own individual wedding. So even when it's a cake that is, you know, in its essence is quite similar, and really it's only the florals and the sizes and the flavours, aesthetically, they are quite similar. You can absolutely put your own stamp on it with what flowers and foliage you use, how it's displayed within your venue, how many flowers you put on it, how those are arranged. So I've done semi-naked cakes for years. I don't do so many of them now, but I think only a few years ago, I think semi-naked cakes made up about a third of the wedding cakes that I did in that year.
Yeah, it was very popular at one stage, maybe about 2017, 18.
Yeah. So, and they were everywhere. So I've done a lot of them, and the flowers you choose obviously lend themselves sometimes to be arranged in a particular way on your cake. So they always look different. And I've arranged flowers on semi-naked cakes so many different ways, depending upon the size and shape of the cake, and also the flowers that they're having for their wedding from their flowers.
Yeah. And then each one turns out different. So it's really lovely. So you also, as well as making cakes for couples, you also teach.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started the Sugarcraft School a couple of years ago, and it was always sort of face-to-face group classes, so small group classes, and private tuition, so one-to-one classes. So the small group classes were great for people who are perhaps really keen bakers. They like making cakes, you know, as perhaps for people's birthdays and things like that, but it was really to help move them on from, I guess, that homemade look to something a bit more professional, a bit more polished, teaching them the techniques and the materials and the tools and how to use all of those. And the private tuition was really anything. So it could be somebody that's already making wedding cakes, already running a wedding cake business, or it could be someone that's just starting out, or somebody that's kind of wanted to explore the possibility of, is this something that I could be good at? Is this something that I could do for a business? Mm-hmm. So those are really good because they're so varied. So you could spend a whole day making sugar flowers, or I had a client late last year who she wanted to know how to make macarons and also how to make sugar orchids. So we split the day 50-50. And that's the point, that you can tailor it absolutely to anything you want. Whereas when I do like a one-day sort of basics class, or a 2-day wedding cake masterclass, or sugar flower masterclass, you are learning what I want you to learn in that course. So these are the flowers you're going to learn. These are the decorative techniques you're going to learn, because I've designed that course to be that, or that this is the cake you're going to learn how to make. Whereas the private tuition can be a lot more prescriptive and sort of tailored to what you want. Yeah,
and so at the moment as well, you're developing an online course system, right? So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this was always part of the plan. And then obviously with the lockdown happening, it's just kind of pushed it on a little bit sooner than perhaps I would have been ready to, but that's fine. So at the moment, I'm just sort of developing those online classes, so that it's really difficult to teach things without video when it's Sugarcraft, because you really, like, as much as a PDF can give you knowledge about something, there's nothing better than seeing how somebody does it. So how I might describe something in words might make no sense to you. It might make complete sense to me, might make no sense to you. So I'm at the moment just kind of coming up with a load of content for online video classes that people can purchase. But at the meantime, I've been building a community of people that want to learn that stuff on Facebook and with a mailing list. So in the Facebook group, basically during lockdown, I've been in there doing lives, doing Q&As, doing demos, sharing recipes. So I've basically been releasing my, the first 3 weeks of lockdown, I released a recipe every single day, completely free, to my Sugarcraft School mailing list and the Facebook group, basically sharing my sort of favourite bake recipes. And yeah, I discovered some I'd forgotten actually. There was some really nice ones in there, and yeah, just pinging it out every day, keeping everyone sort of chatting about it, and it's been really lovely. So yeah, people can get loads of free content in the Facebook group, which will just continue to build.
So where can your Sugarcraft School people find you? If you tell me the links and things.
If they go to the website, which I'm sure you'll link underneath, they go to the website.
So tell us the website name, so just in case anyone's listening on audio.
www.macakecompany.co.uk. And on there is a Sugarcraft School tab, and you just go on there, you can sign up to the mailing list. So from that you'll then get any sort of updates from me. It's usually a few emails a week. I'm not crazily bombarding you, but you obviously at the moment I've been releasing several recipes a week, and then You get invited into the Facebook group where there's lives and demos and Q&As, and we cover all sorts in there. And then also when there's physical courses that come back or new online courses that you can buy, they kind of get first grab at those as well.
Cool. And couples can find you via the same
Yes.
web link, but also on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Marie Antoinette Cakes _UK.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'll drop it in here. So finally, because we're filming this during lockdown in the UK, even though it'll be up and live for many years to come and all the info will still be relevant, although the cake designs will have changed. Yeah. What would be your advice for couples in lockdown at the minute who are kind of starting to think about booking a wedding cake designer? Should they wait until lockdown's over? Should they get in touch now? And what can they be doing to kind of put some of their ideas together?
If it's for couples who are obviously working with all couples who are postponing at the moment and getting them rebooked in, if it's for couples who are just sort of reasonably newly engaged or get engaged but starting to get to that point where the cake is on the list, get in touch with cake designers as soon as possible. I restrict how many cakes I do, so I tend to only take on one per week, purely because it is a bespoke product, and so I can focus just on that design. So obviously popular dates will always get booked up quickly. So even though you might see in sort of the sort of high street wedding magazines, oh, book your cake sort of 3 to 6 months in advance, you know, popular cake designers will get booked up much sooner than that for key dates. So don't put it off. It's worth just getting in touch with people and finding out their lead times. And the other thing is, I would just do your research. So there are so many people that make wedding cakes out there, and obviously they're not, I'm obviously quite niche in terms of my styling and my pricing, so it's worth doing your research and making sure that you find the right cake designer for you, which is actually just reminded me, there's a free download on the website if people are going to the website, my 8 top tips for picking the right cake designer for you.
Oh, perfect. That can be your lockdown homework then. Get in touch with your cake designer, but also do that.
Top tips. So they're quite, a lot of them are obviously applicable to picking your wedding suppliers regardless of what they're supplying, so it's definitely worth a read. But yeah, specifically for cake designers, there's so many different styles and so many different sort of price ranges, and just the way they work. So my process is different to somebody else's process, and you've got to kind of find somebody that is similarly minded to you. I think, you know, you're trusting them to create you something that you're not going to see until the wedding day. So I don't have a catalogue that people are choosing from and they know what their cake's going to look like. It's a completely custom product that they don't get to see until the wedding day. So there's a lot of trust involved there. So just do your research and use this time wisely to sort of pick the best suppliers you can possibly afford.
Yeah, and I think that goes across all specialisms, like you said. So good advice, full of good advice. So I think we'll wrap up there and let you go back to your baking or whatever your whatever world domination you're plotting today in the world of cakes.
At the house, not cakes, I'm afraid.
So thank you so much, Rachel.
Oh, thank you.
And I hope to see you soon and have some of your cakes in real life.
Definitely.
Eating all your samples.
Bye.